On this episode of Nothing But the Truth, we're turning our focus to something that affects all of us every single day: local government. The upcoming New York City mayoral election has put a spotlight on the city, and the outcome of this race could fundamentally alter the character of New York. Understanding how New York government works is the only way to know whether campaign promises are real or just noise. Most of us are familiar with the federal system: Congress, the president, the Supreme Court. But when it comes to the city and state government, the picture is often murkier. We've all heard terms like city council, state assembly, mayor, comptroller. But how do these pieces fit together? Who is responsible for what? And how do decisions actually get made? Local government often has the greatest impact on our daily lives, yet many New Yorkers don't fully understand how it functions. I know I don't. To help us understand this complex but critically important system, I'm joined by someone who has spent decades navigating it: Assemblyman David Weprin. David Weprin has represented Queens in the New York State Assembly since 2010 and previously served on the New York City Council. Public service runs deep in his family. His father, Saul Weprin, was Speaker of the State Assembly. David brings not only institutional knowledge, but a proven ability to get things done. He sponsored impactful legislation and is deeply committed to the communities he represents, including his unwavering support for the Jewish community. With deep experience at both the city and state levels, he brings a rare and valuable perspective on how government really works and how it affects the lives of everyday New Yorkers. Assemblyman Weprin, I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Happy to be here, Trudy.
So before we get to any details of the actual campaign that we are all hearing so much about, I want to really understand how government works, because that's the only way to truly evaluate whether sweeping campaign promises are real, to know which offices they actually have the power to deliver on. So let's break it down. Let's start with the fundamentals. At the state level, what are the main government bodies? What makes up the state's leadership? Who holds legislative, executive, financial powers in Albany?
Well, we have two houses very similar to the federal system, where you have the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. We have the New York State Senate and the New York State Assembly.
So this,
The State Assembly is the larger body, as it is with the House of Representatives. We have 150 members of the State Assembly, each representing about 130,000 individuals right now, which if you multiply 130,000 times 150, you get the population of New York State. The Senate has fluctuated over the years for various reasons. When I first came into the Assembly in 2010, we had 60 members. Then they increased it to 61. Now it's at 63. But it's also a population thing, where 63 times the amount of people they represent, which is a larger district, equal the population of the state.
so for example, in Nassau County, how many state senators are there?
Well, it's also based on the population. Nassau County is probably between 1 and 2 million people.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
I'm guessing Nassau County has about two or three senators and 5 or 6 assembly members.
It is so unbelievable that, you know, that it's very difficult to understand how these systems work. So I personally have a state senator and a state assembly person. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in terms of how these two bodies operate, the assembly and the state senate, do they work similar to the way our federal government works?
They do. You have to, in order to become law, any bill has to pass both houses. It can start in either body. It can start in the assembly or it can start in the Senate. But in order to become law, it would have to pass both bodies and also be signed by the governor, in this case, Kathy Hochul, similar to what would happen at the federal level would have to be signed by the president.
So now let's shift to the city, New York City, for example. What are the governing bodies in New York City?
New York City has a city council and a mayor. It changed actually the year before I got elected to the city council, which was in 2001. We had a charter revision change, and we eliminated, because of a federal case of one man, one vote, or one person vote. They changed the structure of city government, where we eliminated the Board of Estimate, which was a legislative body consisting of the mayor, the controller, city council president at the time, which became the public advocate, and the 5 borough presidents. That used to be a governing body, and the city council had other powers, but it wasn't necessarily all the legislation that it has now. They didn't have land use powers. The Board of Estimate had land use powers. That all changed with 2001, where we had term limits, and all of a sudden there's no longer a Board of Estimate, and there's the power that was vested in the Board of Estimate was vested into the New York City Council, and they also increased the membership. We used to have 35 New York City Council members. Since 2001, we've had 51 council members.
Okay, and so that there's the mayor, there's the city council, and what about the comptroller?
There's a controller who's has oversight over the mayor's agency, and they also and actually I know something about that office because I did run for it. 4 years ago, I ran for controller, and I lost to Brad Lander, who is the current controller, who, by the way, is also a BDS supporter as well, like Mondani is. So he's not one of my favorite elected officials either.
Okay.
The
So
controller basically has oversight over the mayor's city agency, and he does our pension funds. There are quite a few pension funds in New York City. You have the teachers' retirement system. You have the general city employee retirement system. You have the firefighters retirement system and the police retirement system. Those are all pension funds. They each have their own pension funds, and they're all managed by the New York City controller.
The New York City controller works with the mayor. This is all part of the mayor's team, the city council, the controller, and the mayor, or am I wrong?
No, the mayor has his own team, his own agencies. The controller actually has oversight over those agencies. He can audit. He has an audit function of those agencies, but he doesn't work with the mayor or for the mayor. In some ways, they're usually at odds, traditionally based on the position, not the individuals. Generally, the controller and the mayor have different functions and don't always get along. So
then what about other areas other than New York City? So then you have Nassau County, and we have a county executive.
Correct.
So all the different areas other than New York City, they operate in a different sort of system. How does that work?
Yeah, well, we have 52 counties in New York State, and Nassau County is one of the 52. It's a large county, but you also have Suffolk County, which is another large county. You have Westchester County, which is a large county, and then Rockland County, and then counties north. Most of the counties are significantly smaller than Nassau County that you're familiar with, although Erie County is a fairly large county, which is the Buffalo area, and Monroe County, which is the Rochester area, and Onondaga County, which is Syracuse, are very large counties as well, but not quite as large as Nassau. So in the counties, the county executive is like the mayor, is that correct? That is correct, and they all have their own legislature also. Every county has a county legislature, which acts like the city council, or like like the House of Representatives on the federal level, or like the Assembly and Senate at the state level. So the state government,
well, okay, wait, just step back for 1 second. What is the state government responsible for in terms of our local, our matters like policing, sanitation, housing, taxing? Who is responsible for those issues, and which entity is responsible for that?
Well, in the case of the city of New York, which consists of 5 boroughs, it's one district. So for all 5 boroughs, so there's one school district. Other municipalities like Nassau County has multiple school districts, and each one, proposes their own regulations for the students in their particular local school district. In the case of New York City, there's only one school district, and that represents about 1.1 million school children in the 5 boroughs.
Is there any reason why there's only one school district in New York City, but in the other counties there's different ones?
Well, it goes back to the 1700s, where New York City was established as one entity, one school district consisting of 5 counties. Brooklyn being the largest, Queens being the second largest. Then you have New York County, which is Manhattan. Then you have Bronx, and then the smallest county is Staten Island of the 5 boroughs.
So which entity, the state or the city governments are responsible for standards at the educational level?
Well, it's kind of a hybrid. They each have their own. The state has jurisdiction over the local government when it comes to school districts and educational policy. But then it's also the local district. In the case of New York City, it's one district. And in the case of Nassau County, it's a district, and Suffolk County is a district, and the local entities within the county often have their own districts with their own superintendents and their own governance body in the local government.
So what about policing? Which entity is in charge of that? Is that state or is that more local?
That's more local generally. We do have a state police, which is appointed, which is under the control of the governor. But mostly, most of the large police departments are under the local. In the case of New York City, there's one police commissioner who the mayor appoints. It's considered a mayoral agency. But then you have, in Nassau County, you have a police department. Suffolk County has a police department. Each county has their own police department, which also can set local policy at the police law enforcement level.
And with regard to real estate taxes and taxes, I know I know myself, we pay local taxes, but we also pay New York state taxes. So what's the overlap? Do the governments work together? Do they coordinate? Do they work completely separately?
Well, in the case of the taxing authority, local governments need the permission of the state legislature and the governor to make changes in the tax structure. So basically, when we're in the legislative session, which is generally between January and June, the end of June, we're constantly given bills for increasing the sales tax or increasing the income tax at a local government level, and we have to sign off on that. So the state, kind of oversees the local government, but the local government can propose the tax, and the state would have to approve it, other than the one tax that is totally in the control of the city of New York and the city council and the mayor, which is the property tax.
And is that so of every county? So Nassau County, it's the same thing, and Westchester County, those counties are in charge of their own real estate taxes.
Correct. Well, no, generally, yes, that's true, except for the city of New York, which would need Albany approval for any other tax besides the property tax.
And
Property
is,
tax, yes,
so property taxes in the venue of the local municipalities and other taxes like income tax is state.
correct.
Okay, so let's just talk about the Mamdani race for 1 second, because he was making some very sweeping promises, and I want to know how deliverable that is. So, for example, he says he would like to make all of transit free, so that you'd be able to ride the subways for free. And the way he was going to be paying for that was for he was going to tax corporations and wealthy individuals. Is that logical? Is that a thing that you could see happening?
No, it's not really realistic at all. As a matter of fact, when I saw his commercials, my wife said to me, boy, it sounds like he's running the student government president, because you make all these crazy promises that you have no power over, no jurisdiction over. Free buses, freezing the rent, no rent, all of this stuff that he can't deliver on. The most of the for New York City, most of the buses, all the buses and subways are under the control of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which is a quasi-state agency, but it's under the control of the governor, and they have certain structures in place, and they fund themselves through municipal bonds, and they also get state aid. So it's really not in the control of the mayor of the city of New York. Whoever that mayor is, he can request certain things of Albany, of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, but he can't deliver on it.
Well, so what I'm hearing is he can't deliver on it for two reasons. He can't deliver on it because he can't make those changes, because he is not in sole control over the transportation system in New York City. So is that
Correct.
okay? And number two, his ability to pay for it through corporate taxes and income tax on the wealthy is also a fallacy. He cannot act on that either. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And why is that correct?
It's correct because the income tax is what funds certain services, but he'd have to increase the income tax on a select group. In this case, I guess it's talking about millionaires and billionaires. We've often done temporary surcharges on individuals or corporations at a certain level over the years when there was a financial need or there was a major deficit in our budget. But it's something that would have to be done through the legislature and signed by the governor.
So he can't act on that at all. That is not at all under his purview. This is the governor and the state legislature.
Correct.
Okay, what about rent, free rent? Is he able to deliver on that?
He's not. There is a rent guidelines board, which sets the policy on rent stabilized apartments or rent controlled apartment. We have very few rent controlled apartments left in the city because it's really all pre-World War II, and there aren't that many of that infrastructure left. So it's mostly rent stabilized apartment, which are under the jurisdiction of the, as far as increases go, under the rent guidelines board, and they just proposed an increase. It's a board that's appointed by the mayor. The mayor does appoint the members, but they're supposed to be independent once they're appointed, and he can't totally control that. De Blasio tried to do that a few times, but sometimes was more successful, other times he was not.
In terms of changing the rent guidelines, does he have the capability to do that, the power to do that, if he were to be mayor?
Well, he can appoint new members, but the structure, there's certain restrictions on who you can appoint, and you always have to have a certain number of tenant representatives as well as a certain number of landlord representatives. So obviously, some landlords are different than other landlords, but there is a structure in place that he would have to comply with.
What about the police? What would a mayor of New York be able to do with regard to changing the amount of police, like defunding the police? You hear that sentence, that statement all the time. I'm going to defund the police. Is there an ability to do that?
Well, not exactly. It wouldn't be the mayor per se. It would be the city council, which does an annual budget, and they could, allocate less funds for the police, and in that way defund the police. For example, right after the whole defund the police movement, there were members of the city council that were calling not to pass the budget and to reduce the budget by $1 billion for less funding for the police. That did not happen. That was a proposal by a number of city council members at the time, including Brad Lander, who's the current controller. He was a big advocate for defunding the police or reducing $1 billion from the police department budget in the city.
But if a mayor wanted to do that as his platform, could he, single-handedly do that? Or no, he needs the support of the city council?
You would need the support of the city council.
You are a person, David, who sat on the city council and the state assembly.
Correct.
So, and you've been in service for so many years. Do you see a difference in the makeup and the philosophies of the city council and the state assembly from the time that you've started as your service there?
Absolutely. Not so much in Albany in the assembly, because the Democrats have controlled the assembly since 1975, so it's been a long time. When basically the Democrats took over after Watergate, the Senate and the Assembly prior to 1975 were controlled by Republicans, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate. Since 75, the Democrats took over the Assembly. They've been constantly in control and actually have increased their majorities. When I first came to the Assembly in 2010, the state Senate was controlled by Republicans, so it was a totally different makeup, and has since now become Democratic as well. So right now, both the Assembly and the Senate have very large majorities of Democrats.
And has the platform and philosophy of those Democrats changed? I think they're getting much more progressive, correct?
Some, not so much in the Assembly. There have been a number of members that are affiliated with the Democratic Socialists of America, including Zoran Mandani, who is a charter member of the Democrat DSA, we call it Democrat Socialists of America. And probably one of the first people that kind of got involved in that movement was AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who also was a big advocate. But it's certainly not anything near a majority. It's certainly a minority in the Assembly and in the Senate and in the City Council. But I would say when I was in the City Council, it was much more moderate. I was there from 2002 through 2009. And I would say in the case of the Assembly, I would say you've had Democratic Socialists for the first time in the last number of years. But there's still a small percentage, but they're a very vocal membership.
So let's talk about Zoran Mamdani for just a minute. What do you feel he is capable of? First of all, he launched a very good campaign, coming almost out of nowhere to win like that. what are your thoughts on him as a candidate for mayor, and what will he do to the city?
Well, I'm very concerned about his positions and about his what he will do to the city. I think he'll significantly hurt the economy of New York City. You can't just tax billionaires for everything, because billionaires are in a position to be very mobile. They can easily change their state domicile to another state very easily, and they can still spend time in New York when they want to, but certainly it's not something that we can't tax them if they leave the state and they're no longer residents of the state. So I'm concerned about that. Florida already has picked up a lot of former New York residents, including our president, who now doesn't vote in New York and is a Florida resident. So it sounds simple. You tax the millionaires, tax the billionaires, tax corporations, but corporations can also leave New York, and very often a lot of them who are headquartered here were not always headquartered here, and have moved to other states. So it's certainly something. The rhetoric that Mamdani is presenting, I think, is very dangerous. You can't, run a socialist economy in New York City or in New York State, and I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned about what it's going to do to the business community and the economy of New York City and New York State.
He can't deliver on that anyway. I mean, the rhetoric is terrible, and it's very unwelcoming to corporations and to businesses, but he can't deliver on that without Albany voting on that. Is that right?
That's true. That's true. I've actually gotten calls from my relatives all over the country, what's going on in New York City, because they know, I have a political background in the city. I got a call from a cousin in Florida about an hour ago. I've gotten calls from my relatives in Israel, because I do have a lot of relatives in Israel, in both Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and they're all concerned because they all have ties to New York.
Very, very troubling. These are extremely troubling times that this is the best of what New York City has come up with. And that he was able to galvanize the vote and people to come out. One last person that we didn't discuss in our prior discussion about government is the Attorney General and the District Attorney. So the District Attorney's office is the legislative for the city, and the Attorney General is the state.
The Attorney General is a state. They have prosecutorial authority, but they also can enforce the law of New York State and represent New York State in litigation. In the case of New York City and the district attorneys, they're all separate individuals in different counties. That's actually elected by the county. So each of the 5 counties in New York City have their own district attorney, and they're all elected. And they're not all elected at the same time. Some are elected in off years, so it fluctuates. But it's basically a separately elected position, county by county.
The district attorney's office works very closely with the mayoral office. Is that right?
No, not really. It's really an independent county. They prosecute crimes, in their county. They have jurisdiction over crimes committed in their county. So it's really kind of independent. Each county is different.
Before we close, if you wanted to tell our listeners what your thoughts are on a Mayor Zoran Mamdani and what our city would look like with him at the helm.
Well, I'm hoping we won't come to that. I've been a lifelong Democrat my entire life, and I've always supported Democratic candidates at local as well as state level. But I've already indicated that I cannot support Zoran Mamdani, even though he's the Democratic candidate for mayor. So I will not be supporting him. I am talking to Mayor Adams's people. I'm talking to Andrew Cuomo's people. I did actually support Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, and he was not successful. So I personally think our best chance of defeating Zoran Mandani is through Mayor Adams, who has not really done a bad job. He's brought crime down significantly under his tenure. He's done a lot for the business community, and he's someone that I feel comfortable serving another 4 years. So, unlike his predecessor, who was also more of a socialist, although he wasn't an official socialist, but Bill de Blasio was kind of more along that ilk. I think there is going to be talks. I know right now you have both Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams in the race. I predict that that will not be the case. I think there will be putting together campaigns. Now there's Eric Adams has a new campaign manager that actually used to work for me, so I know him well, Eugene No. And
what is his name?
Eugene No, N-O-H.
Is he good?
He's very good. And
Okay.
I think you're going to see a campaign being put together. So I think it's going to change. I don't think you can rely on polls that have been done. I think it's going to come down to a coalition of individuals as an alternative to Zoran Mandani.
Why would you be so opposed to Zoran Mandani?
Well, he's a socialist. It's not someone that is fit for being an independent mayor of New York City that has to deal with everyone. He lets his socialist philosophy guide him. And I'm also, as an American Jew, I'm very concerned about his position on Israel. He's a clear supporter of BDS. He's made comments that could be interpreted as being anti-Semitic. I'm not saying he himself is an outright anti-Semite, but he's certainly an outright opponent of Israel and supporter of BDS, which I think, by the way, violates the law in New York State, because both Governor Cuomo and Governor Hochul continued it, having an executive order prohibiting BDS and discriminating against those that support BDS when it comes to any government contracts. So that is actually still in effect. So in a sense, Zoran Mandani is violating that. He's talking about having Prime Minister Netanyahu arrested if he comes to New York City. Zoran Mandani is violating the law by supporting BDS.
Well, beyond all of those things that you just mentioned, he also has very little experience.
He's 28. He's 33 years old, but he's only been in office for 4 years. Has never really held any other government office, and he's clearly unqualified to be CEO of the largest city in America and running one of the largest corporations, if you want to compare it to a corporation, employing over 300,000 employees.
And it's a $108 billion business, right?
Correct.
Would be totally shocking for a person with zero experience and no qualifications to be handed such a business.
I agree.
Usually, even when somebody inherits something like that, they don't actually run it for many years until they're qualified. So
I agree. I agree, Trudy.
well, I want to thank you so much, David. Thank you for two things. Thank you for really explaining to me and to our listeners the system of government in New York. It's been an incredibly valuable discussion in terms of understanding that. I really feel much clearer about it. And thank you for laying out why Zoran Mamdani would be, a very poor choice and could be devastating for New York, both in terms of people fleeing New York, corporations, wealthy individuals, but then also middle class people would not have jobs if corporations left. So it would be just catastrophic all around. And then, of course, for the Jewish piece of it, where he is an out and out, I believe, anti-Semite who has been very vocal about that and not shy. Has started the SJP chapter at his college and blamed 10/7 on Israel. So I think that would be catastrophic also. So thank you for laying that out, coming from a person who's been in government most of your career and who served the state of New York in so many different roles and is really truly knowledgeable. It's been very, very valuable. This discussion has been amazing. Breaking down the often overlooked mechanics of how the city and state governments operate, your clarity, your experience, your dedication are what we needed to help us become more informed and empowered. And above everything, thank you so much for the service to our community that you've done.
Thank you, Trudy.
To our listeners, I look forward to having you on again when the race gets closer and you actually will make an endorsement. I hope you'll come on back onto the show and explain why and say who you're endorsing.
Absolutely. And I can tell you right now, it's not going to be Zoran Mondani.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth. You can catch us every Thursday at 9:30 p.m. on the radio. If you missed any part of this show or want to listen to any of our past episodes, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.